Welcome back, Endgame community. It's Chris, and I'm going to bring you some of my favorite buy low wide receivers heading into week 9. All right, let's start with a stud wide receiver who could be a potential buy low right now, and that is Davante Adams. Coming off arguably the worst game of his career with one catch for 3 yards against a terrible Saints secondary. This was completely unexpected. Now, he was battling the flu. Maybe whoever has Davante Adams in your league is like, hey, he wasn't 100%, he'll be better. Okay, fine. Then you can't go trade for Davante Adams. But you never know. People panic. Not only that, Davante Adams the last few weeks has been good, but he hasn't been incredible. He hasn't been, just tearing it up. And Derek Carr looked absolutely atrocious in week 8. The offense looked absolutely atrocious in week 8. People start to panic. They start to panic not just on Davante Adams, but on Derek Carr, on the offense. Maybe this offense can't support Davante Adams as an elite wide receiver. He needs Aaron Rodgers. Derek Carr is killing his value. People think like this. Look, I'm not saying he's an easy buy low, but it's worth trying to get him because this is a top 10 rest of the season wide receiver almost unquestionably because of the target share he gets week in and week out. And look, I'm not saying you're going to get Davante Adams on the incredible cheap. You're not going to be able to give up some, terrible player and get Davante Adams. But if you can give up 2 good players or 1 very good player and get an absolute stud player in Davante Adams, it is worth trying it. It is worth checking it out. So go see. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but it's always worth trying. All right, another stud wide receiver who's not really valued as a stud wide receiver pretty much ever is Mike Evans. And look, there's a lot of reasons why Mike Evans is a great buy low right now. Number 1, Tom Brady looks like he maybe should have retired, like should have stayed retired. He looks really bad, missing easy throws, bouncing passes, but also this offense looks really bad. They can't do anything on offense, can't score touchdowns, and people are freaking out about this entire offense. But when you look at Mike Evans, he's been really good this year. If you take out that game where he got ejected, he's been great almost every single week. And even in these last 2 weeks, 18 plus PPR points in both games, and that's with a dropped 64-yard touchdown and Tom Brady absolutely terribly overthrowing him when he was wide open in the end zone. He could have had 2 monster games both of these weeks, even with the struggles of Tom Brady and this offense. But people don't view this guy, they don't even view this guy as really like a top 15 wide receiver. I don't get it. He's on pace to go over 1,000 yards again, probably will end up with 10 plus touchdowns, and it's not going to take a whole lot to go get him right now because his value is way lower than it should be. And look, there's also the potential that Tom Brady and this offense gets better, and if they do, Mike Evans will absolutely smash. So go try to trade for Mike Evans right now before the Bucs figure it out coming off of this, kind of mini buy, and then it's too late because the buy low window will slam shut. All right, I mentioned Deebo Samuel last week, and unfortunately, he did miss week 8 with that hamstring injury. But now his value is even lower, and now is even a better time to go get Deebo Samuel. Why? Well, number 1, because Christian McCaffrey looked all the part of an absolute league-winning, number 1 fantasy running back in this offense, kind of as I expected, and kind of as a lot of people expected. And people are already lowering their value, their opinion of Deebo Samuel because of the Christian McCaffrey move. But number 2, the 49ers are on bye this week. Trading for guys who are on the bye, if you don't need that player in that week, is always a great strategy because if the team that has that player needs points this week and needs to win, they might be more willing to move that player than they would be normally. So go check it out. Maybe the player who has Deebo Samuel needs a win this week because let's be real, Deebo Samuel has not been carrying fantasy teams. No, Deebo Samuel is not going to be a top 5 wide receiver this year. No, he's not going to be a top 10. He might not even be top 15 this year, but he's still going to be an every week high upside wide receiver that you just plug into your lineup and don't worry about it. And you can get him for much less than that. So go try to get Deebo Samuel, especially right now heading into the bye. This is a great buy low time for Deebo Samuel. All right, now from a guy going into the bye to a guy coming out of the bye, and that is Keenan Allen. Look, it's easy to forget about Keenan Allen because he hasn't really played this year. He did return in week 7 before the bye, but he played like a quarter of the game, and then they benched him because the hamstring wasn't 100%. Will it be 100% this week? I don't know. Who knows? Who knows with Keenan Allen? But here's what I do know. Keenan Allen is a high floor PPR monster, especially now that Mike Williams is set to miss multiple weeks. And Keenan Allen's value is rock bottom right now because nobody knows what to expect from this guy. He hasn't played. When he gets on the field, he limps off the field. Like, there's just a lot of red flags for Keenan Allen, and whoever has Keenan Allen is probably fed up and just wants to get rid of Keenan Allen. So you can go get another guy like Deebo Samuel, just a guy that you put into your lineup. You don't have to worry about him. No, he's not going to be, a top 10, top 15 wide receiver this year, but it's okay. Not everybody has to be a league-winning, top 5 player. It's okay to have a guy you just put in your lineup and he's going to get you fantasy points week in and week out, assuming he plays, of course. And you can get that for relatively cheap with Keenan Allen right now. So go try to trade him, especially with a lot of teams on bye this week. You might need a wide receiver fill-in. And then now let's talk about a couple of injured wide receivers who I think are great buy lows right now. And let's start with Allen Lazard. It was obvious in that game on Sunday night the Packers really missed Allen Lazard, because what was their game plan in that game? It was just to run the ball no matter what the score was. Like, they looked like the Atlanta Falcons. Like, oh, we're down 17 midway through the third quarter. No problem. We'll just run the ball 10 straight plays against the Bills offense that's probably going to come down the field and score on us again. Crazy. Didn't even start trying to pass until the end of the game. But you know why that makes Allen Lazard such a great buy low? Is because it shows how much the Packers need Allen Lazard. And it's easy to forget, Allen Lazard was playing great before his shoulder injury, putting up solid double-digit, 15-plus PPR points week in and week out before that shoulder injury. And this shoulder injury doesn't sound serious. Maybe he'll miss one more game, but when he comes back, he's going to slot right back in as the number 1 wide receiver for the Packers, and they need Allen Lazard. And we also know he's a big-time red zone threat. No, again, doesn't have a huge ceiling, but another guy that you can just plug into your lineup as a flex, as a wide receiver 3, feel pretty good about him. And again, the Packers really need Allen Lazard, and it won't take much to get Lazard right now because A, he hasn't been lighting the world on fire, and B, he's injured. And now this player is for teams looking really long term. Maybe you're 6-2, maybe you're 7-1, maybe you're 8-0, and you feel really good about your team, and I'm making the playoffs, no doubt about it. Now is the time to go trade for Marquise Brown. Remember, back in week 6, hurt his foot, went on IR in week 7. Week 9 will now be week 3 of his IR stint. Now, he does have to miss 4 games by rule, but that would still make him eligible to return by week 11. So if you can be without Hollywood Brown for at least the next 2 weeks, he's a great guy to go out and trade for right now, especially if you have IR spots, because you can trade for him, stash him on your IR, and go pick somebody else up. And whoever has Hollywood Brown may not be able to wait for Hollywood Brown to come back because they might need to start winning games. So if you can give them somebody who they can use this week and going forward to help them win, they'll probably be willing to part with Hollywood Brown. Not to mention, DeAndre Hopkins has been lighting it up, and now people are starting to think Hollywood Brown won't even be the wide receiver 1 when he comes back, and it's just going to be the DeAndre Hopkins show. As if Marquise Brown wasn't lighting the world on fire before his injury and didn't have a 30% target share or whatever he had. He's going to be a beast in this offense, even with DeAndre Hopkins. And even if he misses more games, let's say he doesn't come back until after the team's bye, that means you're still getting him week 14 and throughout the fantasy playoffs. And guess what? If you make the fantasy playoffs, if you're going to make the fantasy playoffs, you're not going to care that you didn't have Hollywood Brown until week 14 because you're going to be excited you have him when it matters in the fantasy playoffs. So let somebody else who just looks at this week, right now, can't project forward, let them move Hollywood Brown at a really huge discount. Stash him hopefully in your IR spot or on your bench and have a potential league-winning wide receiver when it really matters, which is the fantasy playoffs. All right, now that you know some of my favorite buy low wide receivers, what about running backs? What about who to start, who to sit, who could boom? We got you covered, everything you need right here in our Week 9 playlist to help you dominate and win.